Hello, happy Friday. Thank you for joining us. This is Well Fed by Food Entrepreneur. I'm Monica Watrous, Managing Editor of Food Business News and Food Entrepreneur. I'm here with Natalie Schmulik, the Chief Strategy and Incubation Officer at ICNC and the Hatchery. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Monica. Thanks for having me again.
I think you might be like our most frequent guest on this program, if you can call it that.
I'll take it. As long as you'll let me, join, I'll be there.
Well, you are a dynamite trend spotter, and you always seem to find things at the show that I always miss. So I love catching up with you after trade shows to hear about what you saw, what you found interesting, what tasted good to you. So we are recapping the Summer Fancy Food Show, which just wrapped. It went from June 25th to 27th. Some of us just got home. I think pretty much most of my friends who are out there in New York and were flying home were delayed or canceled at some point.
Yeah, I had a 3-night delay. Danny had a 2-night delay. Some of our members had to skip their flights and jump on trains. It was chaos, but we made it back. There's worse places to be stuck than New York, I will say that. So I got a few extra nights to go and explore and try a lot of delicious food. But yeah, it was an extended fancy food show, that's for sure.
Right. We got some bonus time. I was really excited though. I mean, as you know, much of a hassle as it was to have my flight canceled, I got to stick around and attend the Startup CPG party at the Shopify, I guess New York headquarters, maybe. I'm not exactly sure what. But yeah, so that was fun. It was nice to be able to make it to that. So that was a silver lining in my travel woes. But the show itself was great as always. I would love to hear what stood out to you as some of the prominent trends at the show.
Yeah, well, firstly, I always think it's so fun. First and foremost, these shows are so exciting because we get to reunite with so many people that we love and we get to work with. And sometimes we only get to see each other at those shows. And I always love when you combine, we do a quick recap of you need to go here, you need to go here. So there was so much. And I think one thing that I noticed kind of stood out first, because the first thing I always look at is what am I just seeing the most of? Not necessarily what's the highest quality and so on and so forth, but hot sauce kind of was everywhere. And not just traditional hot sauces, but really complex flavors of hot sauces. There was a Peruvian everything sauce. We just saw a lot of these kinds of amplified flavors through sauces. There was a lot of kind of honey is always, I get excited when I see a lot of honey because I was talking about honey a few years ago and everybody's like, yeah, we know honey. That's not exactly exciting, but it's really reinvented itself both with Manuka honey and then all the new forms. But there were hot honeys. There was the Queen Majesty hot sauce, and they did some really funky flavors. They had like tequila in one, coffee in another. So you're seeing a lot of these different types of ingredients being incorporated into hot sauces. So it's not just burning your palate, but it's actually just really creating a beautiful dish and kind of trying to extend the flavor a little bit more. Those were really exciting. I think also with the honey, there were a few things that I saw both in honey flavors, but then honeycomb. I saw a lot more honeycomb this year. I love honeycomb. Different bee pollens as well, which we know are really great for those with allergies. You know, if you go to a new city, you go to a new country, take the honey because that usually will actually help you acclimate a little bit more. But there was, I think it's Maori's honey tea. This one here. This was kind of interesting.
It's like crystallized honey.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought this was kind of clever and it kind of puts it right. And we've seen a couple of applications of tea bags are the new thing right now. You've got soups and seasonings for broths. You have say so for cocktails. I mean, the pouches, it's a clever idea. You can get really great ingredients in there. Pretty good shelf lives out of them. There was also the honeymoon chocolate covered honeycomb, which I loved. I thought it's a great texture. It's a great application. Very, very fun. So I always like seeing that. And there was one company doing these honey sticks that were kind of like cocktail honey sticks. So that was really exciting to see.
It was like a like a bourbon or a barrel-aged bourbon inspired honey or something like that. I didn't get to try it, but I saw that in the press room, I think, and I thought that really caught my eye. And then, of course, you saw, because it was in the new Now Next area where you were, You Again has
Yeah.
real honey packets that are infused with adaptogens or Ayurvedic ingredients, and so it's so simple, but it's a delicious product. And it's super versatile. It goes on everything.
It kind of shows you simple sometimes is best. We don't have
Yeah,
to overcomplicate things. I know that innovation is exciting and we think innovation is going to the moon, but sometimes it is that it's simplification too. It's finding something that just works well. It's a great vessel to provide adaptogens, flavors, all kinds of things. So I thought there was a lot of just great tasting items that were simple and just worked well.
absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like in this age of supply chain
Mhm.
challenges, to have something that's super simple to execute and simple in terms of the consumer is resonates with it, they understand it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's really a win-win.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. I think right now we work with so many startups, so being able to see them identify a concept that's scalable and really can take off if people understand it, it's intuitive. That's really the way to go, especially for the startups these days.
Absolutely. Now I want to circle back on the hot sauce.
Yeah.
Did you try Da Bomb hot sauce of Hot Ones fame?
I had to go super mild. I always feel bad because they always want to start me with the spiciest flavor. And
Uh-huh.
as much as I'm okay palate wise eating spicy food, my stomach's not the happiest after super spicy food. So I always have to go super mild, but it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually I tend to do the same. But I was with some friends who were all daring each other to try it, and I thought, okay, well, I just kind of caved into the peer pressure, and they were really great. And one Spice and Foods, who makes Da Bomb honey, and or hot sauce, and for those who are not familiar, the YouTube series Hot Ones, in which the host Sean Evans he interviews celebrities, and they eat chicken wings or sometimes cauliflower wings for the vegans. And I
Yeah.
think that's or Lizzo had Daring Foods because she's vegan, notably, and it's I think progressively hotter hot sauce, and towards the end they're really sweating and very squeamish and struggling a lot. And so Da Bomb is one of those turning point sauces where when they get to that in the lineup, that's when they really start struggling.
Yes.
And so the company that makes that hot sauce is actually based in Kansas City, where I am. So I'm
Yeah.
always happy to see them and see that they're doing well. But I did try it. They were very nice and like just put a little droplet on a wooden spoon, and I immediately got the hiccups and like started sweating. It was even that little bit was quite an intense experience, but it was fun to be able to
It
have
is.
that experience.
Yeah, it's fun. And representing local, I think that's so fun. I do love that YouTube channel. I think it was Maya Rudolph was one of my favorites on that one. Hysterical. I just
Oh,
saw
so
them
good.
play into it so well. And the things that come out of their mouths after eating spicy foods, it's like a lie detector test.
Oh, definitely.
It's so fun to watch. It's a great show.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a highlight for me. But I know what you were talking about with like all of the different global nuances and like regional peppers, for example, or
Yeah.
certain spices or combinations where it was really flavor forward in many cases, not so much about the heat, but really about the complex and layered flavor profiles. Yeah, it was interesting to see, and even like in the incubator area, there were some smaller brands that were using like family recipes to in bottling their hot sauces.
Yeah, and really focusing in on that flavor piece, not just about it being one dimensional spicy. So
Right.
that was great. And then we were in Incubator Village as usual. So we
Mhm.
were excited to have a lot of our brands both in the Incubator Village space with us, but also those who graduated and gotten their own spaces. In our space, we had Lido Foods, Carolyn's Crisp, Inspired Indian. And then we also had in their own spaces our members For Good Granola, which also received 2 Sophies, which was amazing. Think Jerky was there, Blake Seed Based, Let Them Eat Candles, Roomy Spice, so many brands. So it's just, I feel the same pride you do with all of
Yeah.
the local companies being there, showcasing the work. I'm hoping that at some point we can get, I know that there's a lot of states that sponsor sections. So at some point, I'm hoping we can get maybe a Chicago and a Kansas sponsored section.
Yeah, I think Chicago definitely known as a food hub and a lot of emerging brands. Not so much Kansas City and Missouri and Kansas,
We can
but
change
I can tell you there were at least 3 Kansas City brands
that.
at
That's
Summer
awesome.
Fancy
Yeah.
Food. Fomosa was one of my favorites, and that happened to be a Kansas City brand. And I know we'll probably tap into this a little bit more with the trends discussion, but a lot of non-alcoholic beverages, and
Yeah.
Fomosa was one of my favorites. It was a canned, I guess, mimosa-inspired drink. I know that they like co-pack at a winery in Missouri.
Oh, okay.
But it's not like one of those de-alcoholized wine type situations that you
Okay.
see. It's just like apple cider vinegar and a lot of just layers of flavor and fruit juices and I think possibly botanicals. They just give it, like a really nice full flavor.
I
And the
think
can, like the design was just gorgeous.
yeah, the best. I actually find the apple cider vinegar mocktails, it is to me the best base. I think it gives it such a nice complex flavor. It gives it a little bit of that punchiness. You have kind of the sweet, the sour. It's just beautiful. So, and that's the shrubs. I just love seeing more and more shrubs because that is the primary base. And it's great because you can use it for mocktails, but it's the same thing can apply. You can add alcohol to it and you still have a great cocktail.
Yeah, and I feel like it almost simulates that kind of burn that you feel with alcohol, like
Yeah.
the acidness from the vinegar. So it is like it's a nice, if you're looking to simulate that occasion, or just swap out a drink for a non-alcoholic option. There's some really nice ones, and really relying on those flavors and ingredients.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like the idea of the burn. You still get that
Yeah,
burning sensation. Hot sauce, shrubs, you name it. We've got a good burn.
right.
The other flavor that I thought was kind of a surprise, I wasn't expecting it. So much pickle flavor and pickle seasoning, pickles and things you didn't expect to see it in. Nomad Trail Mix was one of my favorite bites. I know I was saying you got to go over there and try it. Their harvest flavor, which has sweet pickle chips in your trail mix. Sweet pickle chips. There was persimmon, bee pollen. They had a lot of funky ones. There were jerky in some, but I loved the sweet pickle touch to it. It was unexpected. I didn't think I would like it as much as I really did like it. So I thought that was just a really cool thing that I saw. And I saw a ton of stuff with that kind of either dill pickle, coating, seasoning for nuts, things like that.
Yeah, that was one that I might not have tried if it weren't for you, the Nomad Trail Mix, specifically the pickle flavor. But then I started looking into them, and like each SKU is super interesting. It's all inspired by wilderness and different. Like I think there was like there's Dune that has like toasted corn and peanuts and Brazil nuts and and then cilantro, and like just really unexpected combinations that work together in a nice and just I don't know, like layers of flavors again and textures.
Yes.
And just really high quality ingredients.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good vessel for it. Also, a lot, I think we talked last year too about Eastern European flavors, and we continue to see that. There were a lot of pierogies, different types of puff pastry dishes. Lifeway launched their farmer's cheese, which I was kind of excited to see that. I grew up eating farmer's cheese, which for those who aren't as familiar, it's kind of like cottage cheese, but less liquidy. It's more spreadable, I would say.
Okay.
But really tasty, and it's kind of it's quite healthy as well. So I thought it was interesting that they went in that direction because it's still not as much of a commonly known item, but I thought it was interesting that Lifeway chose to go in that direction. So, and I got to try a little bit. So it's great to see more of that Eastern European flair being infused into products right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I thought kind of continuing from Expo, and I know there was a lot of concern with artificial sweeteners, and it's kind of the renaissance of sugar where real sugars, I mean, everybody was claiming it, showcasing it on packaging. I thought there was one brand, Java Melts, that was really interesting. And they did, it's again, so simple, but instead of doing creamers, because there's a lot of really great alternate milk creamers or dairy creamers, and then we have the base ones that we're used to with, salted caramel flavor, things like that. But what they're doing is they're just using real sugar and they're just flavoring the sugars with natural. So it's just pure cane sugar and natural flavor. And they have caramel, French vanilla, hazelnut. which I thought was clever because it's much easier to carry around. You don't have to refrigerate it. So if you
Yeah.
are kind of in the airport or on the go and you're drinking a coffee and you need that kind of flavor kick, I thought that was, again, pretty simple and seems to work quite well. It smells delicious. I mean, it perfumed my whole luggage on the way back.
Well, and I feel like that kind of ladders up to the, we were talking about like the honey trend and seeing honey
Yeah.
as a sweetener and more things. This, idea of, I guess, sweeteners that are perceived as natural, but maybe a little bit better for you, like coconut sugar and agave and honey and things that aren't the sugar alcohols or the high intensity sweeteners that have kind of got a bad rap recently. But yeah, certainly like a return to identifiable or recognizable sweetener sources. I feel like I've seen a bit, and then dates.
Yes.
I also saw Date Fix, that like energy, like it's like a little puree with I want to say it was like orange blossom water or something, and like it had some other interesting ingredients like turmeric maybe, in one of the SKUs. And yeah, things like that are just like, these are sweeteners, they have calories, but they'll give you the energy that you want and maybe not some of the discomfort or health concerns that you are feeling, since certain reports have put these in a negative light.
Yeah, you brought that one up to me, and again, I thought it was very clever. I think just having something that's easy on the go, easy to digest, doesn't necessarily spike your sugar level right away. There was another brand there in Incubator Village. I think I have the product. I love this as well. They also, lots of kind of pouches on the go. But this was a woman-owned, I want to say Level or Lavelle. Lavelle.
Yes.
Lavelle Nutrition. I love that because it's specific, and I didn't even think about this. It kind of goes to show you. But it's basically designed for women, and both in the athletic realm, but also not necessarily if you're a high intensity athlete. But they were noticing that a lot of those energy drinks, pouches, things like that were causing a lot of discomfort for women with digestion. And so there wasn't anything really catering to women specifically. And so this brand created something specific to women, and the ingredients are great. I mean, this one's got water, mango powder, date paste, strawberry powder, blueberry powder, and banana powder. And I thought it was so clever. I like that there's a lot more of this celebration of different needs for women and focusing. There was a lot of stuff. There were libido gummies and all kinds of stuff. And I think that's really nice to see, is that there's some specification for specific needs. And I really thought it was a great product, and the founder explained it very well. Did you get to try it?
Yeah. So I found out about them. They were at IFT in the Startup Pavilion last year. And one of the founders, Dr. Linda Alvarez, who's just amazing. She's a medical doctor who launched this business because she, through her research, to your point, like a lot of sports nutrition is developed around male physiology, just because all of the studies of nutritional needs tend to be geared towards males. So so this idea that they're developing a solution for female athletes, which, I think about, if you look at like, and I'm a marathon runner, so I have personal.
You're a runner. I mean, this is right up your alley.
Yeah, and just this idea that, like, you look around and like half of the field is female.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't there products? We have different physiology, so why don't we have something? So yeah, I'm a big fan of that brand, and I love the ingredients, and it does taste really good. And that was one of the standout startups for me as well. I'm glad you also got to try it.
Yeah, it's always nice. I really do enjoy the moments of getting to meet, because you don't always get to meet the founders. And I think there's something really special about hearing the founder story, because you do learn so much more, and there's only so much you can showcase. I mean, some folks are very talented and they know how to package and brand and communicate straight off the pack, but it doesn't always work as well. And then when you do have a chance to converse, it makes such a big difference. I think last year we had also talked about, I think, Oryx Desert Salt. And I love her. I think she's just such a well-informed, truly, genuinely caring about our environment. And I had tried the salts last year, loved them, spent some time learning a little bit more, because I had no idea. There are things that you don't even think about, like with the traditional salt grinders, you can't take the cap off. You have to throw out your entire plastic grinder and then buy a new one. And then I was learning about how there's plastic particles that get into the product, into the seasoning itself. And so her ceramic, these were her 2 new launches at the show. She had the smoked sea salt, which is so fragrant and smells nice, and then also a barbecue. But what I love, because I use this now, I use the salt, and you can just unscrew the cap, refill it, and you can hear all about the story she gives back. She's based in South Africa, and I just think it's such a beautiful story, and that is part of the joy of these shows, is getting to meet the founders and have really informative and exciting conversations with them, and just learning more about the industry that we're in.
Wow. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, she had sent me a couple of the SKUs. I haven't tried the 2 that you just showed, but there was like a wine infused salt that's really interesting, and I use that all the time. It's really good. But yeah, and it's I think that, you know, not beyond the sustainability piece, I think that there are some really interesting minerals that are in this, in the way that, you know, this salt is sourced. So you know, there's almost maybe like a nutritional component in a sense.
Yeah, no, I loved it. The other founder that I had met was, I don't know if you've met before, it was Rachel from Seed and Mill, and I always love Seed and Mill. So they have a retail space in Chelsea Market. I go every time because they were one of the originals to bring halva to the North American market and do it in a really creative way where they have really unique flavors. But I just find their texture, I've tried so many halvas, I find their texture, their flavors are really well balanced. And at Fancy, I had a chance to meet the co-founder, Rachel, and they just launched, which I was excited because I saw it at Chelsea Market. So at the show, they had launched the halva coated pecans, and they're delicious. They're really, really good. And I think the reason I normally like halva, especially from Seed and Mill, is because it's not too sweet either. So it gives you really good crunch. It gives you that really nice kind of, almost goes from crunchy to smooth flavor with the halva, but it's a beautiful flavor. And again, we talked last year a little bit more about kind of the rise of tahini and Middle Eastern cuisine. And so there was certainly even more of that this year, I would say.
Yeah. And, you know, now that I missed that product, I didn't see that, but I did see a lot of innovation around nuts, specifically in the snacking arena. So I don't know if you had a chance to see the walnut, the flavored walnut company. I want to say it's Unbound, might be the name of it, but that might not be right. That was one that stood out to me. Henrietta Said does like these really interesting coated peanuts that were like
cocktail flavors,
you know, barbecuing, or and
those were good. There was,
I feel like there were others that
there was
that
some curry
really
ones.
Flavored
I think I've written down Mike's Organic Curry Love. Lots of curry flavors. Oh, the Style Nuts Company. That was an interesting. They had a ceviche seafood curry flavored cashew.
Oh, I missed that.
I just thought it was such an interesting flavor profile. And I don't know, that could go either way, because I do find when you list ceviche, I think people automatically think raw fish, and then how are you getting raw fish into the nut? But certainly there's no raw fish there, it's the flavor. But I thought that was really interesting because there were a lot of curry kind of flavored nuts and coated items. And then, you know, to your point, lots of new types of flavors and seasoning that are a little bit riskier, which is exciting to see.
Yeah, I love it. Like in familiar formats. One of my favorite products that I tried the show and then ended up getting a shipment of was Tochi Snacks up in the Diversity Pavilion. Do you have some with you? Okay, that salted egg, I burned through that so quickly. It is so delicious. There's also black sesame, ube, and black milk tea. And all the flavors are fire. They're so good. And it's, you know, I was having a conversation with one of the founders about how the ready-to-eat popcorn space is super saturated, and it's a lot of white cheddar and sweet and salty and kettle and movie-style theater, or, you know, butter or whatever. So to see a familiar format that Americans love, but maybe a different flavor profile that they're not, you know, accustomed to, especially in this type of consumption occasion, is such a great way to introduce those flavors. And they're using like the real ingredients, like there's actual black sesame in the popcorn. It's not like a black sesame
and
flavor.
I think it's a nice, to your point, it's a familiar kind of vessel with the popcorn, but the flavors also aren't too far out there. They're in some ways Americanized, right? And ube we know is so popular right now. It's kind of this sweet, creamy flavor. The color is very attractive. So it was nice to see a lot of that. But I do love this rise of black sesame because it can be a little bit polarizing. It's kind of smoky. I spoke to an entrepreneur a little while ago who has a black sesame flavor. She was saying it was really hard to know how to describe it so that customers can get a sense of what the taste is like. So it's kind of thinking what adjectives can I use to convey this message because it's still quite new. And then
I feel like it's nutty. Nutty is like a very spot on descriptor. Some of the products that I've seen that are kind of also doing this, but they weren't at Fancy Food, that I really love are Yishi, which does oatmeal, and then Pockets Chocolates, which does a black sesame, almost like a chocolate coated nut with oat milk, and so it's a vegan product. And I didn't realize I loved black sesame flavor until I discovered those, started eating those products.
It's very satisfying too. I think some of those stronger flavors, sometimes you eat less of it because it is so satisfying. And then in the same pavilion was the Eddie's, I think it's Eddie's. Edie's, it is Edie's. See.
So Edith Pan is the founder.
Perfect. So yeah, they also had a black sesame, which is kind of instead of peanut butter cup sunflower butter cups, and they had a lot of those same flavors, those Asian inspired flavors, which I thought was great. It's kind of nice to see that. So it seems as though there's a little bit more acceptance and people are curious. So I like seeing a lot of those, and I enjoy a lot of those flavors. I always love Asian flavors. The Japanese pavilion is my favorite to visit when I'm at Fancy because there's a lot of really beautiful packaging for one. There was a lot of sakura, cherry blossom, but I think just bringing those flavors into the market and spicing things up a bit is always good.
Yeah, and I feel like it's interesting. Matcha has made inroads so deep into the U.S. retail landscape in just a lot of different forms, and it's almost become as ubiquitous as salted caramel in a lot of cases. And I feel like ube is on that path, and I kind of use Trader Joe's as like a gauge of like taste making. Like if you saw matcha everywhere at Trader Joe's maybe like 5-10 years ago, and ube's kind of been making that. They've been doing a lot with ube lately, and so I feel like, okay, give it 5 more years and we'll see it. Like maybe Oreo will do like an ube cream.
Yeah.
Or something.
I mean, people love it. We have one of our members here is Viet 5, and Tuan, the founder, has an incredible story. I highly recommend if you have not read up on his story, you can find some articles just about his life journey. Really brilliant. But he brings coffee beans from Vietnam, from his family farms, to the North American market. But one of their most popular items, they have a cafe in West Loop in Chicago, and their ube beverage, they kind of have the traditional Vietnamese coffee, but then they have an ube flavor. And it is in such high demand. Every time you hear if somebody wants to order from them, they always want to go for the ube flavor. So I think you're right. I think in 5 years, it's going to be very well immersed.
I love to see it. And then, Vietnamese coffee too is having a moment. And we saw that at Expo West, a lot of ready to drink. And that actually brings me to a trend that I saw at Summer Fancy Food, which was a lot of boba in different ways. And, actually seeing it in the canned format with the tapioca pearls inside the can. But even like Jelly Belly's new.
They're boba.
It was really interesting because, it had like the sort of the floral notes of tea. You can't really like create the boba texture in a jelly bean, but the fact that it draws inspiration from like this bubble tea craze that's been kind of bubbling up is really interesting.
Speaking of both those worlds colliding, in one of my extra nights that I had in New York, I went to one of the famous boba tea shops there, and I ordered an ube boba tea. And they said, you have to wait 10 minutes because we're actually making it fresh in the back. And then the guy brought a pot of them cooking down the ube, making it fresh, because a lot of times it's a powder or it's kind of in a can of condensed milk, but they were making it fresh. I thought it was fascinating. They make the boba in-house, and they took so much pride in how they make everything naturally. And I just thought, this is so interesting that we're just seeing a lot more of this, and really great flavors coming out of it. I love boba tea, so I'm excited to see that trend as well.
Me too. And yeah, to see like companies like Boba Bam and a few others that are doing like Twirl milk
Yeah.
tea at Expo West. I know we keep talking about shows that aren't summer fancy food, but we're talking about like the
Yeah,
overarching
yeah.
trends in the industry, right? And Twirl put out their sort of ready to prepare. There's a ready to eat jelly boba that you could just
Yeah.
pop into your beverage, and that was the brown sugar boba is a little more traditional. You heat it. I think you can heat it in the microwave or stovetop, so it's pretty easy to prepare. But yeah, I just remember talking to one of the co-founders of that company back in March, and she was like, "Boba's the new sprinkles," and like I think that's like spot on, because once she said that, I've been seeing it everywhere, and like especially on social media, like people putting it on waffles and
Yeah.
cakes and all kinds of things that aren't necessarily like
Yeah.
the traditional milk
Yeah.
tea.
No, I agree. I think that's so fun to see. Yeah, and then I think in line with the curry theme as well, For Good Granola had a sweet curry granola. I love seeing the experimentation with granolas uh, and trail mixes, things like that. I also love, it continues to always be a trend, but I'm always curious, what are they going to make crispy next? What's the next crispy snack? So there were green bean crisps. There were Rhythm launched their shishito pepper crisps. I love this Janaba, who's a friend and part of our kitchen incubator collective from Hudson Kitchen. She was exhibiting for the first time, and I actually love that she had one of her members does this artisanal beef crisp, and it is very tasty, very addictive, and so much crunch to it. So it's kind of fun to again see everyone that's working on crunchy different items, and it's very satisfying. There was DJ and A did crispy garlic cloves. I don't know if you got to try them, but there were whole cloves of garlic that were crisped, and you would just chew on them. It's a lot of garlic flavor, but I thought it was interesting, and it's also something you could add to salads and things like that too.
Sure.
And then mushrooms certainly not going away. And I think one of the most interesting things I tried was the Two River mushroom broth, and then their crabless. I think we had talked about it briefly. Their crabless cakes made with lion's mane. I thought it was just really clever, especially as people are really venturing into bone broth, but not everybody necessarily is eating animal byproducts. So I think this was kind of a nice alternative, really healthy, very cozy, satisfying. Did you get to try those ones?
I didn't, but I did take a picture at the booth because the cans for the mushroom broth were
Yeah,
gorgeous. The packaging was just so
it
beautiful.
really is.
I expected like a Tetra Pak carton with like almost like a generic I don't know, but yeah, it was really
Yeah,
striking.
beautiful job with that. Lots of sustainability. I mean, we talked about Oric Salt. I think it was, I want to say Nat Harvest, stingless bee honey, sustainable honey, which was very well done. And then FICO Health always launches really creative things. They do seaweed science, and they had, I brought a sample of, this one was their sea fruit straps. So seaweed in kind of traditional fruit leathers, and they had FICO bucha, I think was it as well. So lots of seaweed components, which I like seeing, kelp and algae and seaweeds and spirulinas, all of that. I think it's really great to see how we're also using more sustainable ingredients from water sources.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but just the biodiversity, or like in people's diets, like the nutrient diversity. I mean, not only is it a more sustainable crop, but also there's a lot of really good nutrients that are hard to find in the same 3 or 5 vegetables that we tend to eat, that make up most of our
Yeah,
food supply.
exactly. Absolutely. I think the other crop that was interesting was the jazzberry, the rice. I think we talked about it briefly, but also,
and they won the Food Slam.
And I think it tasted great too. Another just really flavorful, really nutrient dense, beautiful ingredient. So just kind of adding that diversity into our diets, to your point, I think is essential. Lots of tasty items. I think one of the best bites I had was the Pinza Love pizza. And again, I love focusing on, I do a lot of research in the frozen aisle because I just think it's one of the most interesting aisles right now, just seeing what's going on, because there's a lot of change. There's a lot of transitions. There's brands that launched and moved out of that market, and then there's new brands coming in, but it just continues to show that people are looking for options to have a restaurant style meal at home. And Pinz's Pizza, I thought, really replicated something that you would expect to just order in and get really fresh, delicious pizza, good crunch on the end, chew. They also had a charcoal crust, which looked really fun. So that was a really good taste. And same with the shortbread shop. There was a lot of pistachio again. I loved their pistachio shortbreads. I just thought they were so delicious. Same with, I think you and I talked a little bit about our love of brown butter and
yes.
Black and, is it Bollard?
That sounds right. I didn't catch the pronunciation. I just kept going back for more samples.
I think they had a salted honey brown butter, and it's shelf stable, which really amazing work on that. And then the truffle, which was fantastic. But I love seeing that. We have a member as well that's producing a line of cookie doughs made with brown butter. And I just love seeing that because there's a lot of time and attention that has to go into browning butter, basically, but it gives you such a great flavor. That was another one in my extra days in New York. I went to La Cabra. I was telling you about the croissants, but they had just in the cafe, fresh sourdough bread and brown butter. And I'm just starting to see a lot more brown butter, which I'm excited about because it's delicious.
Yeah, that what would you say, Black and Bollard?
I think so.
Is that the name of the company? I just remember that they had a sign on the front of their booth that said "Butter from another udder," and they had it trademarked. But oh my gosh, they were just doing that truffle butter on pasta, straight on pasta, super easy. So that's another trend that I feel like I've seen a lot of is, you talk about like prepared foods and frozen foods that are convenient to prepare at home, but even just like some of these cooking aids that like make, take a dish from like kind of run of the mill to like restaurant quality. And that was definitely one of the standout products for me in terms of like, oh, this would be so easy to make like a really nice truffle pasta dish at home by just putting a dollop of the stuff on.
Absolutely. Very clever and sweet and savory. So you can go either direction with their product. But
and you can bake with it. There were a lot of applications, like they showed cookies that they made with the like original SKU, and so very versatile and so delicious.
Good. Yeah, and also simple, nothing too crazy. Also back to that theme of simple, but it makes sense. It just works. And then, so the tech innovation, because, of course, there's not always a ton of tech, and I don't like to focus too much on tech, but I'm always curious. And I think there were two kind of really flashy tech innovations there. There was Salato, which is kind of the pods for gelato. So kind of like your Keurig machine, but specifically for gelato making. So you kind of put the pod in, and then you get this beautiful gelato that comes out of the machine and was very tasty. So I think it's really,
it's so good.
And then the other one that I had a really fun time, I was kind of videoing it the whole time and listening, was Artly. Did you see Artly? The mechanized barista, where I was listening to them talk about it, and they said they were inspired. I guess it's the same machinery that they use in hospitals and medical research. I mean, it almost looks like you're at the dentist a little bit because of the way the arm is moving, but you place your order on a tablet, the voice comes up and says, "Great choice, making it now," makes the espresso, grinds the beans, makes the espresso, steams the milk, pours everything out, flavors it does it all. So I just thought in this realm of where everyone's talking about the future of tech and AI in particular and what that means for the industry, we know that technology will always play a role in this industry, but those are kind of fun things to see as well. It's kind of fun to watch that and see how it comes together.
Yeah, I didn't get the opportunity to order. I think at that point I already had like my morning coffee. I wasn't ready for more caffeine, but I was with some friends as they were picking up their orders, and I was really impressed. Not only was it just fun to watch, like it, do the little foam milk design, but also just it had so many options. Like it was like there was like just the flavors. It wasn't just like your standard like mocha and caramel latte. It was like it had a lot of different.
I agree.
Options.
I was surprised too. I thought maybe they'd make it nice and simple, but they really came in with a bang. We can do everything. Yeah. I didn't get to try it either, but I'm glad your friends got to try it because it did look really fun.
Yeah, it was an experience.
And then go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no,
I
go
was,
go ahead. I just want to make sure that I was going to shout out one brand before we
oh
conclude
yeah,
our conversation.
absolutely.
It doesn't really fit into a bucket, but it was something
I
that we
know. I
both
feel
talked
like that
about.
too. Like sometimes I don't know how to transition it, but it's just, this was a good taste. But the pastel de nata from Nata Pura, I think it was, which is the Portuguese egg tarts. That was the one I kept saying, you have to try it. You
Mhm.
have to try it. Tiny booth there, but also frozen dessert that comes out stunning. Just, they had different flavors. They had salted caramel, they had chocolate, they had the natural, but tasted so delightful and just really good ingredients. And again, feels like you just went to a very expensive pastry shop and you can just keep it in your freezer.
Yeah, I was glad you told me about that because it is easy to miss it. It was in one of those
Yes.
importer type sections, I think, where there were a lot of small brands and like little, clumps. And so it was one of those things that like you had to, I mean, in my case, I was seeking it out, and I'm glad that I knew to do that because it
Yeah,
was really
because
good.
everything's sandwiched between cheese on the top floor. You have to
Right.
find it between the cheeses because there's cheese everywhere. Really good tasting cheesy.
Yeah, for sure.
And then a lot of tinned fish. I know we had some conversations
Mhm.
about that as well, but lots of different flavored tinned fish. And I was reading some data reports too about the increase in consumption of tinned fish, which is really exciting to see. And then we talked briefly about krill, which Danny had noticed as well, which was brand new
Yeah.
and such an interesting concept and very sustainable as well.
And
Delicious. Yeah.
delicious. I really enjoyed the sample that I had.
Yeah, it was really good. And then I think the other interesting item was probably the schmallow, the kind of like whipped cream
Yes,
can, and then it was just, instead it's marshmallow fluff basically, which again, it makes sense. Why not? If you're putting it on your hot chocolates, things like that. I think that was such a great fun thing to have.
that was the product that I was
Oh,
going to
good.
mention because I do feel like that was like a really unique, caught my eye, and then I tried it. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. And it's one of those things that like, why hasn't anybody thought of this before? But it definitely has different application. I mean, it was dairy free. It wasn't vegan because I think there were some egg
Hmm.
whites in it. But the dairy free part is compelling for people who are avoiding
Sure.
dairy
Yeah.
ingredients, and the fact that it makes it. I think you do have to actually refrigerate it after opening. So I looked into it, but it's shelf stable on until you open it. And it toasts like a marshmallow or like it roasts. Like they had like a little torch when they were handing out samples, and it browned right up.
Yeah. I think it was such a great concept. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned it before, but say so. I do want to double tap on that because I feel like,
There.
oh, perfect. Yeah. So it's interesting for those who aren't familiar. It's like a tea bag, but it's got cocktail mixer ingredients in it. You steep it, you add a spirit if you're so inclined, or you can drink it as a mocktail. But I tasted a couple of them, and they tasted really nice. Really high quality ingredients, and it's just such a unique packaging
Yeah.
innovation that I think I'm not exactly sure like in what scenario I would have a portable cocktail that I would like take with me. I guess maybe if I were traveling and I wanted a nightcap in my hotel room, I'm just thinking about the portability of it. But certainly, like, it's interesting as an experience, and certainly easy to ship. It's lightweight, so if you order it online, you can have
That's
it
a
shipped
great
to your
point. Yeah.
house.
It's easy to get out there. I think it's clever. I love the concept. I've always liked this idea of kind of steepable products too. And I'm
Mhm.
one of those people where you can't find hot water everywhere you go, and I'll still put tea bags in my thermos. And with cold water, I'll just pour cold water over it. And after a while, the flavor does kind of seep out. And I had the opportunity to work with one of the first cold brew tea companies, FET, and her process in particular is slow brewing. So it's really about using cold water because a lot of times heat can almost burn, especially some tea leaves are so delicate. And so when you put really
Sure.
boiling water, that's why a lot of kind of these high-end tea companies will say the temperature of the water, what it should be when you're steeping the tea bag. But none of us are really following that necessarily. We're just the water boiled and pouring it over. But it can
Right.
actually burn certain tea leaves and certain ingredients. And so this idea of being able to kind of slow brew something or even brew it in colder liquids is really unique and interesting.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just one of those things again that you kind of like ask, well, how come this hasn't been done
Yeah.
before? Like it just seems such an interesting idea. And then another one that I wanted to mention that was almost more on the tech side, and they're a B2B company, was
Mm.
Foodberry. And so I don't know if you had a chance to try, but they do edible plant-based coatings almost. I think they called it biomimicry. So it's inspired by nature and like the coatings and peelings that come on fruit and vegetables. And they create that sort of skin or peel that you could then encase wet ingredients like, or high moisture ingredients like peanut butter or hummus or yogurt or ice cream. And it just has like this edible coating that almost makes it where you can put it in a biodegradable packaging and it won't degrade. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's the value proposition, is that it's reducing waste
Yeah.
in some way. Um, but it's also, I mean, I tried some of their prototypes and they were delicious, you know, so it makes a great snack, whether you care about the sustainability story or
Yeah.
not.
I mean, that's like peanut butter and jelly right there.
Exactly. Yeah, in fact, that's what I had. I think it
I
was like,
remember you mentioning.
I think it was like I think I had like a raspberry coating with a
That
peanut
sounds
butter filling.
good.
I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
super poppable, and yeah, it was really
Yeah, I'm gonna
delicious.
have to try that next time. I know there have been some innovations around these kind of using um, plants to coat with whether it's bananas to kind of decrease the oxidization and things like that. So it's great to see that there's continuing to be focus and research done there. So I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, that was one that I wasn't aware of until just prior to the show. I received a press release about it, and so I made a point to look for it at the on the show floor. Yeah, I'm just like reviewing my notes to make sure I don't miss
I
anything while we're
had
still
one. I actually met these ladies. They're wonderful. I met them at Expo West when I was being interviewed with Ray Latif from Taste Radio, and he introduced me to
Yeah.
them. And they were exhibiting at Fancy for the first time. Did you try Nuffs?
Oh my gosh, they're so good. Did you try the hot
Yes,
honey
they're so
ones?
good. They're
They are
really, really
addictive.
well done.
Yes.
I mean, just they're gluten free. The flavors are great. The crunch is great. You really would
Mhm.
not know that it's gluten free. I loved seeing them there, and it was really quite popular. But I think their products are great and kind of hits those marks too with the hot honey and hot sauce honey, all the things we talked about.
And not to mention it, we didn't really hit on this a lot, but I did see a lot of innovation around sort of allergen
Yes.
friendly or allergen free formulations. And so I believe that's an almond flour based
Yeah.
cracker. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what, you know, if it's like free of top eight or how it works, but I just know that I think that was developed. I think, okay, the founders are sisters. I know Christine is one of them. And I want to say I know they started in, they were doing like these superfood bites that were like chilled, and they had Asian inspired flavors. And then I think the crackers were just kind of like a line extension sort of thing. Like, let's just, you know, try this. And I think that the crackers are really taking off for them. So
That's how
I'm
it
excited to
happens.
see it. But I was happy
Yeah,
to see.
sometimes you start with one thing and then it's a whole other thing that takes off. And I agree. I think the allergen free space is so exciting. One of our members, Everybody Eats, uh,
Mhm.
really amazing. I mean, they manufacture themselves, and that is free of the top allergens. And they did such an amazing job with getting great flavors, great crunch, great taste. So it's nice to see that it's moving in that direction. So it's not just about, okay, it's allergen free, but it's allergen free and it does taste good and it is still nutritious and the ingredients are good. So I love seeing that growth in the space right now.
Absolutely. Like it's inclusive. It's not something that's just for people with allergies. It's for everybody at the table who wants a good snack. And you mentioned Blake earlier, of Blake
Yeah.
Seed Based. You know, that's another entrepreneur that has some really delicious products and came from that personal pain point of he had a severe nut allergy, and developed these seed based, I think it started as bars, and now there's the
Yeah,
crispy
they're
rice treats
delicious.
and some other things. So good. But he just got into like
Yeah,
Walmart.
I saw
So he's
LinkedIn post.
killing
It's so exciting. They're growing and it makes
yeah.
sense. It's such a good product. It's good ingredients. It really does taste good. And it is inclusive to your point. It doesn't mean that you have to have a nut allergy to eat it. It's really anybody can enjoy it.
That's how I feel about
Yeah.
Partake too. That's another brand that's like anybody
Yeah.
can enjoy this. It's not just for people who are seeking out, gluten-free or a vegan product or whatever. So, yeah. Anything else that we missed?
I think we went through, I'm sure there's plenty we also missed, but I think those were highlights definitely from the show. I mean, there's always great things happening there. And I did enjoy, I will say, I thought there was a lot more inclusivity overall. Just getting to see more diversity in founders is so important. But I mean, from all walks of life, there was a woman there who was making pierogies, and she was hard of hearing, and she had a woman with her doing sign language. And I just thought, this is so impressive. And I'm so happy that she came out and she delivered and had that opportunity. There was one woman who was making cookies who had a learning disability. And she was on her own, doing an amazing job. And I just love seeing that I think it's kind of starting to open doors, and people aren't necessarily shying away because they feel, well, I don't fit in here, or I'm different. And I just love seeing that inclusivity and everybody coming out to support. So that was something that was really a highlight of the show.
I agree. And I don't know if this was the same table that, or the same booth that you were referring to with the pierogies, but I did see one booth that said proudly deaf owned, as big as anything else on there. And I just thought, I love that. That's amazing.
Exactly.
So
yeah. Another good year. Overall. Yeah. Never gets old.
Yeah. So what's next for you? You're going to IFT?
Yeah, we'll be exhibiting there. So everybody who's in town or not in town, you can still grab your tickets to IFT Next. We will be exhibiting there. We have some of our members also exhibiting. Lido Foods will be there again, Alchemeat, some really great brands, Kombucha Warrior, all showcasing, the innovation, great tasting products. Some of them will be pitching. So there's going to be an exciting pitch there. Lots of our partners are there. So that's going to be, they always do a good job. And I love that IFT is really, taking something that for a lot of folks, maybe unless you're in food science, maybe, or engineering, you're not always seeing how that influences the rest of the industry. And they've done such a great job of making it really modern, really exciting, really innovative. So I'm excited for that show. And then we've got, at the Hatchery, a lot of really exciting events coming up. In August, we're hosting our annual exclusive buyers event, which is kind of a fun thing that we do with our members, where buyers get to come out, and it's kind of just buyers are invited. So if there are any buyers interested in attending, it's an opportunity to see about 30 retail-ready, innovative, diverse brands. We host it at the Hatchery, so we always have a good time. And that's that chance, as I mentioned, where you can meet the founders, hear their stories, try the products, because they've all worked so hard to get to this point, and we love the opportunity to showcase their work and all the amazing things they're doing. So hopefully we'll get to see a great turnout again this year, and we'll keep moving.
Awesome. And just a reminder to those who are interested in your programming and the events, they can find that at the Hatchery.
Yeah, so right at our website, thehatcherychicago.org. You can also, we cover all industries as well at our Make City incubator, but you can find more information there, and you can always submit an inquiry form, email us. We love connecting with other folks in the industry and helping where we can.
Awesome. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for always bringing all these great insights and observations to this live stream. I don't know what to call it. It's not a podcast.
It should be, Monica. You should do a podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and have a great
weekend. Thank you. You too. I always have such a blast. Thank you for having me.
Bye.